So let's pick up on a couple of things. Jill talked about student engagement. We all know we want it. Peter talked about collaborative. Who's your team, your learning community? You need them to be able to get to the student engagement. So really, you could all go away now. Basically, that's all the presentation. But we do certainly have some specific ideas on how you might get there, no matter where you are in terms of your journey. Whether you're brand new, never TA'd before. I hate that word, teaching assistant. I don't have teaching assistants. My graduate students are learning facilitators. The focus is on the students, not on me, the prof. Or maybe you're a very experienced prof, very innovative already, and you're just looking for some additional ideas. Wherever you are on the spectrum, what we hope to do is try and help you improve that student engagement. And really, if it comes down to it, we're trying to do it to help our students, but also it's a lot more fun to teach students who are engaged and motivated, who have light bulbs going on over their heads, and you see that light bulb, and they go, oh, I get it. So that's what we're going to be trying to do in the next 40 minutes. Oh, you got a mic. Go
I got a mic. Look at that. So James and I are part of the teaching team for the first year, the scary first year calculus-based physics course. Some of you may have taken a course like that in the past. Really scary. And so it's the kind of course that's looked at the gatekeeper, basically, for physics courses beyond that, so upper-level physics courses. So I'm a PhD student and a TA, and James, of course, is a course instructor. So by really focusing on community, we have achieved double learning gains that we saw in traditional standard lecture approaches. And these are actually on par, these learning gains are on par with the best courses at Harvard University. So pretty impressive. And also, not to mention the surveys, I guess, from last year. The surveys, the USATs, as some of you might know them, the student engagement or surveys of teaching, were the best in the entire department for our courses. So pretty exciting. So what we're looking to do is to maybe give you a couple ideas as to how we got there. How did we get there? So we have the Kevin and James 4-step plan. There it is. All right. So the Kevin and James 4-step plan. We got to stop. We got to question everything. We got to figure out, what are we teaching? Why are we teaching it? Why are we teaching it that way? We then have to move into support systems. We have to look at teamwork. How do we develop that community of fellow learners? Third step, we have to look at developing novel feedback channels. So ways that we can give frequent feedback to and from students. And then finally, we're going to look at how those 3 steps, how can we translate them and apply them to develop those student learning communities?
So a bit of setting expectations. We've been talking about this presentation for a couple months now, and the problem is we keep adding more stuff to it. So we're not going to get through it all. You know, the slide deck is the slide deck. That's not the most important thing. We've tried to put the most important ideas, though, at the beginning, so that way we made sure we got to it. And really, if we're going to start on our 4 easy plan, we really need to start questioning what we think about learning. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to question coming from you. Start with you. So this is kudos to Eric Mazur. He has a very famous talk called Confessions of a Converted Lecturer, where he starts with this idea, and I think it works very well. Every single one of you, I want to just think in your head. I'm not going to ask you to tell me, but think in your head something you're really good at. I mean, really good at. It could be sports, it could be arts, it could be advanced calculus, it could be whatever, just something you're good at, okay? Just hold that. I don't nearly care what it is. What I want to know is how you got there, all right? So, first feedback channel we're going to be using is our super high-tech flashcards. So hopefully each of you got that. And I'm just going to give a range of answers and ask which, probably none of them are going to exactly match the answer in your head to how did you get so good at that thing. But pick the one that matches best. So how did you get so good at it? I'll let you read. And I'm very, put them down. Gee, you guys are too fast for me. Gee, I'm too slow. I got to move things up. More coffee. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to vote. I learned this from Ed Pranther, University of Arizona. He uses flashcards in a class of 1,200 students. Intro to Astro, flashcards. He's got 3 rules. Don't vote until I say to vote. We already broke that one. Vote by voting on your chest. That way, other people won't be distracted. Because if you're waving around your D, everyone else is seeing B on the back. And no, you didn't vote B. Finally, keep it up until I say put it down. All right, 1, 2, 3, vote. Heaven, scan the room. No, you got to put it on your chest. I'm going to walk around the room. I can move. I don't expect you to move. Holy mackerel, that is really interesting. I'm really glad it goes that way. It always goes this way, but I'm always terrified someone's going to be A, and then I'm going to have to scrap the rest of the talk. Put them down. What would you say? What percentage?
What percentage is B? I would say, I don't know,
80% B.
85%?
85% B. And what you were telling me was practice followed by timely feedback is how you got that good. Then we definitely did have some C's, not nearly as many. B's dominated. So now think about that teaching role that you're going to be going into next Monday, maybe. And what are you going to be doing? What's your primary role? I'll let you read. And you're not voting until I tell you to vote. Get your card ready. 1, 2, 3, vote. All right. It's all over the place. There's still quite a few B's, but a lot of A's and a few C's, couple D's. But I would put A and B sort of similar. Okay, thank you. Put them down. All right, we got a little bit of a disconnect that we have to face. Most of you were saying you got, 85% at least, saying you got good at things by practice, by doing, and then having timely feedback. Not feedback 2 weeks later. I bet it was feedback that was in the moment. Or at least very soon to actually doing the action. I'm not saying everyone, but I bet that's the case. But a lot of you are telling me that you're not thinking that your primary goal is feedback. A lot of you are telling me that your primary goal is telling students what they need to do, what they need to know. So we got to deal with that disconnect. Because if the way you learned best was practice with timely feedback, why aren't you, can you teach that way? Exploit that. Provide the students with lots of opportunity for practice with timely feedback. And I'm not talking 2 weeks later. I'm talking within 5 minutes, within 10 minutes. Much feedback. All right.
So we have this disconnect, as James said. But the issue, we're questioning. Step one is question everything you know about teaching and learning. What is the purpose of a teacher? What's the purpose of a TA? Next.
Yep, sorry.
Because we can easily access Google. You can ask Google anything and get a great answer. Well, sometimes. Sometimes it's pretty mediocre. But you can also look at Wolfram Alpha. You can get incredible amounts of data from Wolfram Alpha. Online textbooks, they're everywhere. Solution manuals, you can easily access those. So really, what is the value added by a TA or by an instructor? So we got to find out, how do we actually look into this? And that's where James is going to come back on.
So there's a bit of a debate, and I've had this debate in my department. Is teaching an art, or is it a scholarly activity? And I come down very firmly in the idea that teaching is a scholarly activity. And we can get into that, but just let me say, if it's a scholarly activity, the first thing you should do is hit the literature, right? Now, we're not going to go through an entire 3-hour session discussing various educational research studies that have been done. We're going to just cut to the chase. There is a huge amount of literature on these things. And just to give you sort of, going back to 98, Hake's original study, lots of stuff coming out of UBC. I really like that one. But anyway, exploring why certain teaching practices work better. And there's a common theme that's coming up in all of these, and Jill said the word interactive, active learning really is key to improved learning outcomes. Again, that practicing with timely feedback. Now, I'm just going to give you, we're not going to go through all those. I'm just going to give you one story of one of these publications that is, I think, particularly poignant. And I had lots of chance to discuss it with the authors as well. It was a head-to-head teaching competition. Not a bad journal, science, that's pretty good, okay? This was done at UBC. And what they did was 2 different sections of the same course. They had an established, well-respected, very good student survey results prof, teaching relatively traditional, up against another section that was being taught by Louis and Ellen. Louis was a postdoc, Ellen was a grad student, no teaching experience beforehand. But they had hit the literature, and they had a very strong community of fellow teachers and learners to discuss educational practices. So it was Louis and Ellen up against this well-established 30-year career prof. Little story, Ellen actually is a grad from Queens, and when she was doing research in condensed matter physics, completely different from this, but got into this because it was interesting. What did the results look? Control, that's the well-established prof. The students failed the test. The new people making use of these ideas from the literature, more than doubled. Those are the dark lines. This is the score on the test after that 1 week head-to-head competition. And Louis and Ellen blew the other prof out of the water. All right. So there is huge, very useful information in the literature, and making use of it, you can be just like Louis and Ellen and do much better than the person who might have had the 20, 30-year career teaching, who was a very smooth lecturer, smoother than me or Kevin probably, who had very well-rehearsed presentations, but didn't see active engagement as being the key thing. That's what Louis and Ellen were going after.
So how did Louis and Ellen get there? They had to foster real learning. So what they did was they had to give students a purpose for learning, other than just, you have to do your homework. Well, because you have to do your homework. There was a purpose. There was an outcome that they could see down the road going, that's where we want to be, and that's the purpose for why you're doing this activity. Next, which follows quite nicely from that step, is that content was not king. They weren't focusing on getting through X amount of chapters in the textbook. It was more about developing that community. So then step 3 is then collaboration is king. So developing that nice sense of community was really key in their study.
But don't you see how counterintuitive that is? The first thing when I was a prof, I came to Queens 2004, the first thing I worried about, what's my syllabus, what textbook do I pick? You know, it was all about content. I thought that was the most important thing. And it's taken me a while to realize, no, that will come. That will come. You don't need to worry about that. What's more is setting up those opportunities for active engagement, for collaboration, or else the learning just won't be there.
Well, what they did was they gave students control. I mean, that was the big thing with that paper, is that they gave students control in the sense of their communities and being able to design their own communities.
So instead of just telling them what they needed to know, they gave students ways of accessing that information, and then they helped the students assimilate it. So giving students control, thank you, Kevin. Let's say, can we do that here in a plenary like this? If we can manage to give you some control in this experience, well, then certainly you should be able to do that in your labs, your tutorials, or your own courses. Now, what would be our learning gain? I don't think we want to do fundamental theory of calculus or how does photosynthesis work. Let's try have a goal among this group that's much more mundane. I flashed it before. Let's just try and determine the number of people in the room. Okay? We're going to do a head-to-head competition. Kevin.
It's on.
It's on. All right. Kevin is our traditional teacher. He's worried about having control in the classroom. He's worried that students will get off topic. He wants to make sure he gets the result that he wants. So he's going to do it all himself. So he's going to go around and count you. At the same time, though, we're going to do an alternate approach, a more collaborative approach. I'm going to give you some control. We're going to do both at the same time. Let's see how it works. Never done this, but it sounds like fun. I'm going to ask you to help me in this process. You're going to collaborate with me for this very simple goal. The way I want you to do it is the following. Every single person in this room is number 1. Therefore, your number is number. Thank you. Great. You're all going to be standing, and you're going to pair off with someone else who's standing, and you're going to add your numbers together. And that new number is going to be number. Oh, good. Excellent. All right. One of you is going to sit down. I don't know how you're going to decide that. Just decide one of you sits down. Do you see where we're going here? So you're going to add your numbers. That's your new number. One of you sits down. The other keeps standing. That's really important. Okay? Then the person who's standing pairs off with someone else who is still standing. You add your two numbers together. And we repeat. Any questions about that, though? All right. Are we ready? Everyone, please stand up. Excellent. Holy mackerel. How far are you, Kevin? Oh, Kevin he's not even halfway through. He's running over here. Okay, what numbers do we got? Wait, are you sitting? You're standing, and your number is? Yes. Thank you. 154. And you're still standing? So we're 154, 51, 205. Thank you very much. Kevin, what do you got?
About 205-ish.
Ah, you suck.
I got this left to go. We're getting there.
That was...
If people would stop moving.
I know. Darn students. All right. I really want to debrief that, but if I talk, I'm totally going against what I've been saying. It's my instinct, though. I really want to talk about some of the things I observed there, because that was really interesting. That is actually the first time we did that little activity, and I think it worked beautifully to try and illustrate us giving you control to get a desired result. What I want to do, instead of me talking, though, I want you to form groups of 4. If you got only 3, that's fine. If you got 5, that's fine. And I want you to come up with, first, learn each other's names. You can't work in a group if you don't know each other's names. I'll tell you a little secret. I'm horrible at names. In this room, you have permission to ask the same person their name 3 times, because you are allowed to forget it twice. All right? You got that, Jack? No? Okay. Learn each other's names. Form groups of 4. Write down on that piece of paper that we gave you 2 things you observed. Advantages. 2 disadvantages. You have 4 minutes. Go. All right, your 4 minutes are up. Your next task is on the screen. People in the front row, this is the part of the presentation.
Please be careful.
Dangerous. Keep looking forward. Disco.
Sorry? You want to make a favorite airplane?
And our first airplane made it to the front. Yeah. Oh, nice. That was a good one.
Where'd it go?
Don't look back. Don't look back. Always keep looking forward. We did not have enough. Whoa. You almost killed the vice provost in the head. Woo. Whoa, that one skimmed ya. Thank you.
I'm in medicine, not engineering. We can deliver.
We got baby airplane too.
All right, grab a couple.
Just want to read them out, kind of thing.
Just a couple. Just say a couple, yeah.
Next slide. Next slide.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. We had last chance. Ow. Someone got me in the arm. And this is another activity we have never, ever done. There is a meta level to look here other than just it's kind of funny to see you guys. Ow, hey. I hate class-wide discussion. Right now, I was really tempted. Kevin, let's just do class-wide discussion. Let's get some ideas from some of the people. Give me feedback. You know what happens, right? Class-wide discussion. It ends up getting manipulated by the people in the front couple of rows. The people in the back never get any input, really. Class-wide discussion is not, for me, an active engagement technique. At least this, we've got a relatively random sample. Well, a sample, I guess, determined by how well you threw your paper airplane. But to give you some ideas, what people said in terms of advantages. Active participation could be faster. Certainly in that example, we were a lot faster by going to that collaborative approach. Kevin didn't even get halfway through by the time we were done. Disadvantages. It's messy. Yeah, and isn't that uncomfortable? You didn't tell me, though, that when you got really good at something, that it was because it wasn't messy. Maybe sometimes it was messy. Maybe sometimes it was hard. Maybe sometimes it was confusing. So I don't think messy, we don't like it, But maybe that's not the thing we should be worried. Maybe messy is okay sometimes. If the students are active, if they're engaged. Another advantage, brings ideas together. Some don't participate, may be uncomfortable. That's a disadvantage, by the way. Some don't participate, may be uncomfortable. I'll tell you that when I was giving passive lecture, chalk and talk, I was at sort of 98% weren't participating. And then the one guy in the front who kept catching my mistakes. So I'm not going that every single one of you was participating. If I set that goal, that's just too high. But if we can set the goal for 60, 70, 80, always working towards 100, but I'm still satisfied even if some don't participate. Kevin, you want to?
Yeah, so I have one here which could feel threatening.
Yeah, no, that's great. That is, it was uncomfortable. We gave you guys control. It was no longer us in the spotlight. Hey, I'm a prof. I love the spotlight. I can talk and talk and talk. Ask my kids. I can talk and talk and talk. But I had to let you guys do some of the work. Let you do, and that's what we do in the first year physics classroom.
Another disadvantage, so maybe they don't move outside the circle they met.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so maybe you need to structure the course with many activities so that students engage with many different groups. All right, this was just a bit of a snapshot of how to take a relatively mundane task and how you can engage the participants in the task and actually get a better result that's faster. One thing I observed, there was a group over here. Somebody wasn't too clear on the instructions, and I saw one of you explaining to them, no, we're supposed to do this and this and this. And they understood it better from their colleague than they understood it from what I put on the screen or what I said. Don't you think that happened not just in this corner? It happened in a whole bunch of places. What are we supposed to do? What's 47 plus 36 again? Yeah. And you were helping each other, and that made it so much more real. All right. I lost my in the pile of the paper airplanes. All right. Where are we going? So
did you see what we did there? We went from questioning everything to all of a sudden we're now at step 2. We just developed community. Yeah, we're pretty sneaky.
Yeah. We didn't actually care about what you thought the advantages or disadvantages were. We cared that you got to know a few names of people next to you.
Pretty sly.
Well, aren't we mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what I'd like you to do now is with that group of 4 people, I would like you to find one thing that you have in common with that group. Wait. One thing that you have in common with that group. And on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to use, I want you to include that hashtag and also include that one thing you have in common with your whole group. And post it to social media. You have 1 to 2 minutes right now. Go. All right, let's come back together, please, folks. Let's bring it back. We've got disco lights again. Great. So I checked on Twitter. There's some great pictures there, so feel free to go on and look at that hashtag and see all the other pictures of all the groups and what those groups had in common. Fantastic.
So I have to say, when Kevin said this idea, I'm like, I don't even know how to do this. Are we actually going to be able to get the people to do it? And obviously it worked. It worked great. Thank you so much for doing that. So much fun.
Great pictures. Good stuff. Okay, so what we have is a group of 4 people, a group of 4 acquaintances. So how do we go from being a group of 4 acquaintances to developing a learning community? Because obviously everyone's here for close to the same reason. We all want to learn something about teaching and learning. We're here for, obviously, some really good reason, which has got to be that. So how do we develop authentic learning communities? So I want to tell you a little bit about how we work it in first year physics. So over the past couple of years, I've been the lead TA for all the TAs in the course. And every week we would meet for about an hour. And that hour, we would talk about the tutorial material for the coming week. So we would sit there and kind of hash out what problems we want to give the students, what are we going to cover, how are we going to cover it. Not only that, but we also talked about what are our challenges in teaching. Are we having some students who maybe aren't getting some concepts, and how can we address those concepts in a different light to make it more clear for them? So we've been very intentional about those meetings. The TAs at those meetings also know that they have influence, because I don't come to the meetings with a huge agenda of what I want to cover in the whole hour. I say, I want to cover stuff for next week, but the other 45 minutes, I want to talk about whatever you're having challenges with in the tutorial sessions. So, and it's also important that these TAs can be honest and be vulnerable, because it's important that they can actually be completely open with what they feel about the course. If something's working for them, great. If something isn't working for them, I want them to be open and honest with me so that then I can talk to James and say, you know what, this method of teaching is not quite working so well. How can we change it, or how can we fix it? And lastly, it's important that these TAs are accountable, because last year we had 5 of them. If one of them doesn't show up, you notice. So that's really important. And so that's all about authentic learning community.
And you notice Kevin didn't talk about my role at those meetings. Yeah. I have no role at those meetings. I'm not at those meetings because we wanted that to be a learning community for the TAs themselves, that they wouldn't feel like it was being led by the prof in the room. They didn't feel like they were being judged on whether they knew first-year physics concepts or not. And they were willing to share. They were willing to be vulnerable. And it worked very well. Every single one of those TAs, actually, have asked to come back to this course for this year, which I think is a really good sign of success. To put that in contrast, I was giving a workshop in Toronto, and one of the professors talked about how he needed to TA-proof his course. In other words, he had to make it so that no matter how bad a TA he had, they wouldn't screw up the course on him. Isn't that sad? What I've found time and time again, graduate students want to contribute. They want to be able to be creative. They want to play an active role. As a professor, I can give them control, and they're going to be able to do things often better than I can. And it's not me just being lazy and not doing my job. It's because the main focus is on the students. How can we get the students learning the best they can possibly be learning? And the TA team, the LF, Learning Facilitator team, have lots of great ideas. And they're on the ground dealing with those students. They need to have control. All right, so what have we done? We've talked about stopping, making sure you examine all the ideas that you already have packed into your head about what good teaching is. Talked about developing a community of fellow learners. And we've only started. You've got some names now. You know some names of people who care about teaching. Where do we need to go? It's not just good enough to have a posse. It's not just good enough to have support. You have to be able to make use of that to do useful things for your students. And that's where we get to the third one, feedback. So we go back to Louis and Ellen's paper, and Carl Wyman as well as third author. What were they actually doing? We know that they had a very strong learning community. UBC had this thing called the Carl Wyman Science Education Initiative, which brought them in together with other postdocs and graduate students to learn in very much similar sort of events like this. But what were they doing in this class to double the learning gains? It was all about timely feedback to the students. So giving students valuable feedback every single class, not just once a week. And also, very important, there was a flow of information from the students to Ellen and to Louis in that room. So they could, on the fly, tailor what they were doing in that class time to what the students needed. Where are we going? You're going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the first year physics class, we have a slew of opportunities for students to get feedback. We really prioritize assignments and activities where we can give and receive feedback from students. So this is an example of just a given week. There's over 5 opportunities where we give and receive feedback from students. And so if we look at the one that's outlined there, the clicker question and the peer instruction, James is going to lead us through an exercise just to give you a feel for what that's like.
So this is a technique that we've seen and made use of in a tutorial with a small group, or we make use of it with 200 students all the time. The idea of, instead of me lecturing about content, maybe I'll just start with a brief presentation. Make sure that the students are all in the same sort of space, you know, where they came from. Maybe they came from bio, or they came from social, or they came from psych. I got to situate them in the world of physics and be thinking like physicists. So put a brief presentation, but very quickly ask them a multiple choice question. That's just an easy sort of format to get them thinking and questioning. Maybe you're going to say, well, isn't this just teaching by the Socratic method? Isn't this really an old idea? Of course, it worked then, it still works now. What we do then is we can poll the students. Maybe you use flashcards like we have here. The batteries never run out. It never crashes. Maybe you have something more sophisticated like a clicker or turning point system. Maybe you use a web-based device. Whatever. It's still students, though, committing to an answer on that question. And then, on the fly, at the front of the room, have to change what we're doing based on whether we got a problem in the room or not. So if there's really a very low level of understanding, we have to say that. I admit it. It's a problem for all of us. It's not your problem. It's our problem that there is a misunderstanding. So I might revisit that concept. and maybe go back to an even easier question. Hit it again. What we're hoping for is certainly that students get the right answer. If on that first poll they get mostly more, 80, 90% get it right, then I just wrap up the explanation. Make sure that the students who got it right for the wrong reasons understand the right reasons. The real magic, though, happens in that middle ground. That area where in the room there's a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions, but also some right answers. And here is a case where we go collaborative. I give control to the students. Turn to your neighbor. You have 1 minute. Discuss your answers. Go. I might do 30 seconds. I might do 2 minutes. It depends on how hard the question is. And then poll again, get to see what the answers are in the room, and wrap up. So this is just a simple flow chart to understand this thing called peer instruction, which was developed by Eric Mazur at Harvard University, and has really, in many different institutions, literally hundreds of institutions, has been made use of to try and improve engagement. Let's do it. So, here's my question to you. So, in the peer instruction system that I have just outlaid in that flowchart, should students vote before they turn to their neighbor for discussion? Read and get your flashcards ready, but do not vote until I say vote, please. Don't talk. I want you all answering your answer. You get a chance to talk. All right, 1, 2, 3, vote, please. All right, and down, thank you. I got to make sure. I'd say 80% A. So you're telling me that they should vote first. And certainly that is the system that Eric's developed and tested, and he's tried many different things, and that gave the best result, where students committing to an answer, when he then launches them into peer instruction, they have much richer peer instruction. You might not care about a ball rolling down a plane, which is a classic problem in physics. You care if you're right or wrong. All right, let's do a tougher one. You're the instructor in the room. You're doing this peer instruction. 50% got it right. 50% got it wrong. You ask them to turn to each other, discuss with each other. They have a minute. Where should you stand? Get ready to vote, please. 1, 2, 3, vote. All right, and down. Much more of a mix. Please, turn to your neighbor. Discuss with him your answer. You have 1 minute. Go. If I could have your attention back. All right, get ready to vote again, please. I hate cutting off such great discussions. I was listening to what you were saying, but wait, that's something I have to do, of course, because there's other things we want to talk to you about. Get ready to vote. You're voting again on this. I want to see where you're at. 1, 2, 3, vote. All right, vast majority B with some A's. Thank you. Yeah. All right. This is one of those that I don't think there's directly a right answer. And sometimes you might do a question that has 4 possible answers. It doesn't have to be always just one right answer. I would make the case for what most of you are saying, B, in terms of moving around the room, and it's how you do it that matters. And there's actually an interesting study where they actually did a comparison between a prof who stood at the front and the level of the engagements of the students, and he stood and he looked at his laptop, and another against a prof, or another study against another case where the prof was walking around the room and listening. And listening is absolutely key. And maybe also some of you cheated in this, and you took a look at what Kevin and I were doing during that peer instruction.
But they were on Facebook at the back.
Yeah. And what were we doing? I was just targeting groups that were quiet. I was getting down and listening, and my first question was, well, what do you think? I wanted to know what they think. I wasn't there to tell them what the right answer was. Please. Yeah.
When the professor enters the group turns to the professor, and that's the right answer?
Yeah, so...
Doesn't it sometimes get in the way of the dynamic of the group?
So, just in case you didn't hear at the back, can the professor actually stop the discussion? Oh, yeah, for sure. So I was talking to this group. They were already done. They had settled on their decision. They were done. This group was still talking. I didn't go and talk to these folks. They were in a great conversation. I went and chatted with these folks because they were done, and I just wanted to hear what they were thinking and whether this little activity was working for them or not. So for sure, I think that we have to understand sometimes the fellow students can teach each other better than we can. We got lots of opportunity. Even though this is a pretty interactive plenary, notice what we're doing. It's still me and Kevin talking for most of it. Nonetheless, there's still as many opportunities where you can teach each other and help each other and develop your learning community.
I should also point out that during lectures, we also have TAs who are in the room as well, who float around the room and also do the same as James was doing. So answering questions, kind of listening to the conversation as, poking in, going, okay, yeah, they're on track, moving on.
And I had to give up something for that, right? I had to have that TA do less grading because I thought they're being a learning facilitator, they were more effective when they were in that moment in the room with me and walking around the room, looking for the quiet groups. That's really what it is. All right. So now, that's just one. Oh, please, Rick.
Yeah, I sometimes sneak in a little C as well as I walk across the back of the room and come down the other aisle. Because it gives me a real picture of the degree to which they're engaged. See a snapshot of the whole collection of screens. Yeah. But no policing.
No policing. I'd say, actually, I had a call from a Globe and Mail reporter who's doing a story on how a lot of universities are banning laptops. And I didn't get quoted in the article at all. I think what I said was a little bit wrong. I said, well, if I have to ban laptops, doesn't that mean I'm doing something wrong as a prof? Like if Facebook is really that much more useful or interesting, that's my problem. That's not their problem. And if I have to resort to banning, that's all about I'm doing something wrong. So I don't ban, obviously. Yeah, so getting a snapshot. I also say, sometimes, the cell phones come out in my class. That doesn't tell me students are bad. It tells me they're done with the discussion. Let's move on. So I use that as an indication, time to keep going. Let's keep it going. It's got to be fast. It's got to keep moving. All right, so we just did an example of a novel feedback channel that maybe you've seen before or maybe you haven't. It's very easy to use. You can go right down to this polling strategy. You can just be asking students to use their fingers. A, B, C, D. Vote on your chest. It doesn't require technology is my main point. All right,
so we're moving on to step 4. We're almost there. Step 4. We have a couple different applications. Where are we going to go from here? We're first going to look at your learning community. That's application number 1. So I want to tell you a little story first. But 4 years ago, I was exactly where you are. And I sat down, happened to be sitting beside a fellow physics graduate student. Had never met her before. Now we're great friends, and we both talk about teaching and learning all the time. I'm not lying. She is now a high school teacher, and we are still in touch, even talking about different techniques that James and I are thinking about doing. I run them by her, and she goes, you might want to try this, you might want to try that. And I just get ideas from her because it's two different scopes. I mean, university compared to high school. But, it's still transferable. So having that community of learners is really beneficial. So, it is now your turn. You have those groups. I would like you, when I say go, to exchange contact information with your group members. So, for example, email. And I want you to commit today to a time, a place, and a date that you'll meet up with this group 2 weeks after you start teaching. So I have an example there, the Grad Club, on September 25th at 4 p.m. I was thinking after we put that slide together, how many people are going to be there at that time on that day? They're going to be overwhelmed.
Kevin's buying first round.
All right, so you have your task. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you all at the Grad Club on the 25th.
We should ask for a percentage of the sales.
Yeah. So that's step 1, or application number 1. James is going to now talk about application number 2.
All right, so a possible topic of conversation when you meet with your group at, say, the Grad Club or the Common Ground or wherever. Think about what you've been able to do. We're not claiming that you're now an authentic learning community, but maybe it's the start of an authentic learning community. Think about how you can create that environment for your students so they can develop and make their own authentic learning communities. So a topic of discussion when you meet, maybe let's call this homework, is when you meet with your group, discuss one thing that you did do to help your students build their learning community so that they can really turbocharge their learning, and you will get more engagement.
Great. So similarly, when you do meet with your group, another idea I'd like you to look at the different feedback channels that we looked at today. So we had paper airplanes, we had flashcards, we had peer discussion. What else did we have? We had
Twitter.
We had
And
Twitter.
dangerous airplanes.
Dangerous airplanes, yeah. So when you meet, I'd like you to discuss which one of those are you going to look at using in your teaching potentially. There are a lot, so you have a lot to choose from, or maybe come up with another one. So that's another thing you can discuss when you meet your group at the grad club or the Common Ground coffee shop.
Yeah, I'd add to the, maybe you got something better. And maybe it might work, maybe it won't work. Just give it a go. See what's going to happen. Your students are going to appreciate it. They're going to appreciate that you're not just teaching, from the textbook, that you're interested in hearing what they're saying and how they're thinking. So try and open up, even if it's a very simple. It doesn't have to, I think Twitter is, for me, that's a little too techno for me. I'm not that comfortable with that. So I don't do Twitter in my own class. I'm always worried that there might be some certain comments might come up on Twitter. Do what you're comfortable with, but create that new feedback channel. All right. So just to give you a heads up then, we're very much in the home stretch. Remember, at the end of today, we're going to be revisiting this 4-step plan. You're going to have lots of interesting discussions, tons of ideas about teaching today. You're going to have great discussions one-on-one and also with facilitators. So pick and choose what you think might work for you. Evaluate it, collect it, because you're going to be doing that at the end of today. And then, of course, the door prize. So to sum up, I'm doing the sum up? Okay. I keep doing this, even though, I've won some teaching awards, which actually, of course, the grad students should be receiving with me as well. I still am having to constantly think, why am I doing this? Oh, it's just because we've always done it this way. That's not a good reason. So stop. If you get a chance, by all means, look at the education literature and try and get some ideas. Even better, make use of the great amounts of skills in this room and at Queen's in terms of really skilled, creative, innovative teachers. Go sit in their classroom. This year, I'm going to go sit in Alan Abelson's first-year calculus classroom. I've made a pact with that because I want to see all the great stuff he's doing. Find some prof that you want to go sit in their classroom. You are more than welcome to come and sit in 104, 106. You'll have to answer questions and do peer discussion on first-year physics, but you're all more than welcome. Please don't all show up on the same day, but that's okay. All right. You've got to create your support structure. None of us are strong enough to do it all on our own. And when I say all, I mean really do it well. You can do it kind of middling on your own, but why go for middling? Aim for authentic, collaborative, engaged students. Open up new feedback channels to give information, to let the students know how it's going in their learning, but also to be able to tailor what you're doing with the students. And finally, we talked about a few applications of some of these ideas. The main point is, even if you're no longer the primary content delivery machine, you do have an incredibly important role. You are the leader in the room. And it's up to you to lead. So take that opportunity. Help your students develop their learning communities. Help them to learn how to become active, engaged learners. And it's going to end up being a lot of fun. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.